Okay, guys, so there's something called polymetallic modules that are sitting at the middle of the ocean in the Pacific that have built up for millions of years to basically become these extremely, as of recent, valuable nickel, cobalt, and other types of metals, manganese, that can be used to create electric cars. And not only that, but they can be used for all types of things. Nickel can be used for creating batteries and cell phones and all types of stuff. So this is the new race for the $16 trillion metals that are sitting at the bottom of the ocean. And, President Trump has signed an executive order to basically go and get these metals mined. And it's extremely interesting because you're going to have every other country that is sitting there waiting for the approval that they can mine these metals. Right now, there's a lot of restrictions in place, and a lot of countries are just sitting waiting, especially big companies, some of them that went live on the stock exchange already, and they have billions of dollars that are sitting and waiting and preparing to mine these metals. So this could be World War III, and it could be fought in the ocean or, potentially on land. But, the gold rush is going to happen in the ocean. So I'm going to show you guys some really interesting stuff.
Time. And this is the context. They're looking for their next economic opportunity. And that gets us back to this patch of ocean where billions of apple-shaped metal balls sit 5 kilometers under the water. These are suddenly really valuable, and I'm going to explain why in just a sec. But the upshot is that Nauru has unique rights to this bed of ocean. And once again, they are making a deal with a powerful outsider, a company who stands to make a lot of money off of these little metal apples. It looks a lot like a repeat of history. It looks like a big, powerful organization coming in, and Nauru, in its desperation, ceding power to a much more powerful entity. How do you respond to that idea that this is just a repeat of the same dynamic?
Well, I'd respond to say, I think you've got it wrong.
Do I have it wrong? I'll let you determine that once we move on with this story, which, by the way, gets really juicy because there's a bunch of updates. I'm recording this moment like months later because there's a bunch of updates and you will see those soon. Right now, I need to thank today's sponsor because sponsors are how we're able to have you in swapping legit. And that's where these little metal apples finally come back into the story. By the way, I'm going to stop calling these little metal apples because they're not called that. They are called
Polymetallic nodule.
or just nodules. It is a word we should become familiar with because we're going to be hearing about them a lot more. So billions of nodules are sitting 4.5 kilometers under the ocean surface on the seabed. Enter the Metals Company. That's literally what they're called, the Metals Company, TMC. They're a Canadian-based company founded to do one thing, which is to harvest these nodules, which, as you will see, is incredibly controversial.
So this is what it looks like with light shone on it.
I've been talking with the CEO of TMC to try to understand how they plan on even doing this. He's been showing me imagery of how they send these huge vacuums down to the sea floor to suck these nodules up.
You can see how the nodules get sort of plucked off the surface.
Now, TMC is not allowed to harvest these nodules yet. No one is. So what they've been doing for the last 10 plus years is investing $500 million in preparing, in researching, in developing technology, and undergoing all of the complicated rules and requirements necessary to start this harvesting.
As I said, there's billions of dollars that are preparing to harvest these nodules. And guys, this could be the start of World War III. We really need to become familiar with this. And make sure you smash that like and comment, subscribe to let other people know about this because this is going to be absolutely crazy. And of course, the US is going to want to get their paws on this before anyone else.
To fuel all this investment, they went public on Wall Street a while back. They raised more money. But the way capitalism works is when you raise money from investors, those investors want a return. TMC has a lot of pressure to make money off of this venture that they've sunk $500 million into. How much money is down there if you were to translate that into dollars?
I've heard estimates of something like $16 trillion.
Now, these nodules have been down there for millions of years, as we saw, but only recently have they become super valuable. And for this, I turned to my friend Joss.
There are nodules down there. They're basically lumps of metal that are sitting in the dark on the floor of the ocean. The nodules are valuable because they contain nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese. Nickel and manganese are used mostly in steel production. Copper is in basically all of our electronics, and cobalt is actually used in jet engines and like our phone and laptop batteries. But the reason why there's a lot of urgency around this right now is that all four of those metals are currently used to build electric cars. What's attractive to mining companies is that it's kind of like you get four mines for the price of one because you've got four big metals that you can sell into markets.
We need more of these metals. We need billions of tons more of these metals. And so the question that society has to answer is, where are we going to get them from? And what will be the impact of getting them both to the environment and to the people living on the planet? This
is not about we need these metals and we can't find them anywhere else. This is about whether we want to have another source of the metals as they expect the demand to continue in the future.
So you've got TMC and a couple dozen other mostly government subsidized companies out there in this zone where there's a ton of these nodules preparing to harvest them, but they can't yet. They're really close to being able to go down there, but they can't yet for two main reasons. The first is that we're not sure what damage this will do to this ecosystem that we've just barely started studying.
They are putting down harvest heavy machinery that will just scrape the bottom of the ocean.
You know, anything that gets sucked up with the nodules will die.
What happens if humans start kicking up storms of sediment?
There's going to be a cloud of dust.
Oh, there's creatures that live on the nodules. Clouds of dust?
Dust clouds.
Cloud of mud, a cloud of sediment.
Behind this collector vehicle.
Noise
pollution.
A bunch of artificial sound where it's been totally silent forever.
That's a vast area to expose to a new industrial activity.
Vibrations introduced into the ecosystem. A plume.
The plumes.
The plumes.
Plume flows.
Plumes coming from
the discharge from the ship.
Doesn't sound good.
That ecosystem is going to be impacted.
And then there's all of the microbes.
Oh, a bunch of microbes.
You know, there's big
microbial
communities inside
the sediment
that play a role in, you know, how our carbon cycle works, actually.
Carbon absorption.
Oh, and this is a carbon sink.
The oceans absorb about 25% of the carbon that we pump into the atmosphere.
Usually when humans mess with things, we find that one thing triggers another that we didn't anticipate. This is an untouched part of the world. We don't have a lot of those left. Going, you know, 4,000 meters down to mess with that after everything that we've already done. There are creatures that live directly on the nodules. So every time these researchers go down there to take a look.
How do they even research all this stuff in the dark?
They're basically coming back with some new cool looking invertebrate that no one has ever named or seen before.
My God, the creatures down here are wild looking.
These aren't things with faces.
Things like corals and sponges and sea anemones.
Translucent and slow growing.
Whoa. Squid worms, gummy squirrels. Sounds like a candy.
And all kinds of weird and interesting fish and other sorts of creatures.
We haven't found these anywhere else on the planet.
And so the idea of possibly destroying some of them before we've even known them, I think rubs a lot of biologists the wrong way.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot going on down there. I mean, it's not a lot of density of life, but the complexity, diversity, and potential domino effects here are not well understood and potentially way bigger than first meets the eye. It's not just a desert down there.
Thank you to Joss, who actually taught me how to be a journalist back in the day and is very good at what she does. She has a whole channel called Howtown where her and Adam Cole explain how we know things, this ecosystem, how we know what animals live down there 4 kilometers under the ocean surface. So go check that out over at Howtown.
But there's another.
So that's what the polymetallic modules look like, guys. They're like basically these apple-looking clusters of metal that have been sitting there for millions of years. And yeah, the race to mine the $16 trillion metal is underway from an executive order from Trump, and also dozens and dozens of other countries that are on standby ready to harvest this, and big companies as well. If they're spending billions to go and harvest these metals, you already know that they're looking to make tens of billions, 20 billions, $1 trillion.
Reason why companies aren't allowed to start mining the nodules yet. And it has to do with who gets the money. There's a lot of value in these little metal balls. And the question is, who has the right to exploit them for profit? Back in the old days, the answer to that question was easy. Whoever was the most powerful and technologically capable country would just go down and take all the resources. But our modern world is one of international laws. However weak they sometimes are, we have a framework for deciding what we do with a patch of ocean like this. A patch of ocean that, by the way, doesn't belong to any one country. Okay, so this document, this is basically the rule book for how the law of the sea should work. It's called UNCLOS, the UN Convention Law of the Sea. We talk about this a lot on the channel. It's a big part of this story starting now. This treaty that the entire world has signed, besides a few countries, including the United States, who doesn't like to be constrained by international organizations, says that anything found in this water is the common heritage of mankind. It belongs to everyone. It's the world's resource. And to that end, any money made off of this should benefit everyone. The benefit of mankind as a whole is the verbatim language. Benefit of all mankind as a whole. There we go. The law says that anything found out here in the deep ocean that doesn't belong to any other country belongs to the whole world. Everyone should benefit. Anything mined or exploited from this area, this international seabed, must be to the benefit of everyone. And it specifically puts emphasis on developing nations. This is trying to level the playing field and make sure that we don't just repeat the same old story of the past. Now, they have a couple ways of making sure that this happens. Number one, in this law, it says that if a rich country wants to go out here and explore for nodules, they have to explore not just the area they want, but an additional area that has nodules in it that will be reserved for a developing country. This, frankly, took me a minute to get my head around how it actually works. And here's Mariana drawing a graphic during one of our calls to help explain it. The point is, if you're a developing country, you are entitled to one of these reserved areas that's already been explored by a rich country. You are entitled to exploit it. Okay, that sounds like leveling the playing field. The other big rule is anyone who goes down here into this part of the ocean that the whole world owns and exploits it and makes money off of it has to pay a bunch of that money to the International Seabed Authority, who then distributes it out to all of the member countries, which is another way that developing countries are supposed to get in on the riches of the ocean, even if they don't mine it themselves. The other big rule here that affects Nauru and TMC, and you'll see why in a second, is that if a corporation like TMC wants to go out here and harvest all these nodules and make a bunch of money, they can't just do that on their own. They need to be sponsored by a country that is a member of this treaty. It's like 170 of them. That country has to be their partner. The corporation can't just do it alone. The sponsor country is very important and stands to benefit from this relationship, but also has a big responsibility to regulate the corporation, to make sure that they're following all the rules, that they are making sure that it doesn't destroy the environment. Okay, so that is how this is supposed to work. That is how this treaty says that the nodules and any resources we find in this international water is to benefit all mankind and level the playing field for developing countries. But those rules are currently being stress tested. So TMC really wants these nodules, but they're going to have to play by all these international rules we've talked about. And one of those rules is that they need a sponsor. The corporation can't just go out and do this on their own. They need a country to sponsor them. And remember how developing countries are entitled to these reserved patches of already surveyed ocean floor? Well, TMC made the rational business decision, and instead of choosing its home country of Canada to sponsor them, they chose 3 developing countries, these 3 tiny island nations: Tonga, Kiribati, and one country whose story you know very well now, a desperate and exploited island nation who is looking for their next potential economic miracle.
By getting a developing country, and in this case Nauru, to sponsor them for an exploration licenses that they would be guaranteed nodule-rich areas without having to go look for any nodules whatsoever.
So here are all the countries that are out here. Most of these, again, are state-run enterprises. And here are all the patches of ocean that TMC has been allocated, thanks to their sponsors. It's nearly half of the reserved areas that have been allocated to developing countries. So they're all out here surveying, preparing, doing a bunch of research, while the ISA is finalizing the regulations, the environmental protections that any mining operation needs to follow. They can't mine yet. They're getting close, but they can't yet.
So this is what it looks like with light shone on it.
Well, geez, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
The whole point of this sponsorship arrangement is it's a layer of accountability for TMC. Nauru is liable to keep TMC compliant with any environmental regulations in mining the deep sea. So Nauru is required to have enough people and experts and infrastructure to be out there checking in on their operation, visiting them out of the blue to make sure that they're complying. It's a big job and it's an important job. If they don't do it, they could be screwed if TMC doesn't come.
Okay, guys, so that is some of this crazy, crazy stuff that's going on. If you appreciate this kind of information, make sure you smash that like. I'm sure half of the world hasn't heard of these polymetallic modules yet. And here we go. We have Sean Ryan that just dropped a video today. This could trigger World War III official preview. So this is just
The White House is deciding whether to permit a first of its kind mining project at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Now, it follows an executive order signed by President Trump. This is way back in April, aimed at jumpstarting the deep sea mining industry. Spearheading these efforts, the metals company, its shares have in fact soared more than 75% since the executive order was signed.
70% of the known reserves of nickel and cobalt and manganese sit.
So this is the CEO of the metals company, the company that's basically spent billions preparing to mine these polymetallic modules.
In the form of these polymetallic nodules. And they literally just sit on the seafloor like the one in my hand. So it's only a matter of time that we got around to it. And there was a false start back in the 70s when, and that's another story, right? Because the CIA were very involved in getting this whole industry started.
Really? Why so?
It's interesting. It's part of the Pacific Ocean with potentially billions of dollars worth of minerals.
I've got some ideas. I got a feeling it doesn't have anything to do with mining.
It has nothing to do with mining, but it was a great cover story. The Russian submarine, which had nuclear warheads on it, the K-129, sank in the Pacific. The Americans had already implanted listening devices on the seafloor around the Pacific, so they could detect nuclear explosion and other activities. They were tracking this submarine, and all of a sudden they heard an explosion. And the Russians didn't have this same technology installed in the oceans. And so the Americans quickly clocked onto it, and the CIA got involved. But they had to have a reason to be out there because the Russians were looking for their lost submarine, and they'd had no idea where it was. They could just say, well, it left this port this time, and we last heard at this date in this location. First, they needed to establish were the warheads in place, were they worth recovering? And when they decided, yes, they were, they said, well, actually, we can't just go and pick them up because the Russians, it'll become an international incident. We might have World War III on our hands. And so we need to use the recovery of these polymetallic nodules as the cover story to go and recover the sunken Russian submarine. So they thought, well, they're not going to believe that we, the government, are going to be involved. So who can we get to front it? Howard Hughes, because everyone thought he's a bit crazy. He'll be up for this.
Aims to mine minerals critical for batteries and other green technologies from the Clarion Clipperton Zone.
And so they reached out to Howard Hughes, and he said, yeah, of course, no problem.
Good evening. Across the country today, Americans were debating the value of the Glomar Explorer, the ship Howard Hughes built for the CIA, a $250 million intelligence gathering project to raise from the ocean floor a Russian submarine.
The CIA funded it all, and there were other companies involved, and the Glomar Explorer became the first deep sea exploration vessel.
Has precious metal. What percentage of that rock has precious metals in it?
We turn 100% of this into saleable material, and it's got about 33% pure metal. I've had the first-hand experience of witnessing, in one particular region. It was in Indonesia, actually, where 10 years ago, there were no people focused on nickel mining. We visited there, my team and I, maybe 3 years ago. This town of 70,000 people had been built, all focused on nickel mining. And it was all 100% done by China. I mean, when China sets its mind on things, they become very, very impactful and successful. And in this case, that's what they've done.
A bold new move from the White House could reshape America's energy future and the ocean floor. President Trump signing an executive order to fast track deep sea mining off the U.S. coast. The goal is to unlock billions of dollars worth of minerals like nickel, copper, and cobalt.
This is something actually that's never happened before in the US, this large scale deep sea mining. And President Trump is aiming to jumpstart the process of making this happen.
This industry almost went that way as well.
Yeah.
And it was only the election of President Trump that provided a pathway to us rescuing it and America reasserting its dominant role when it comes to ocean metals. Well, I bought you a gift today as well.
Oh, I love gifts.
Yeah. Well, this is a very precious polymetallic nodule. And we had them made about 5 million years old, this one.
So, guys, this is the Sean Ryan podcast. And yeah, I mean, let me know what you guys think of this crazy story. Like I said, not many people are aware of what's going on right now. $16 trillion industry, with all countries waiting to pick up these metals, and who knows what's going to happen once they announce that they can resume mining. Uh, as you saw, Sean Ryan's title of his new video, and with the CEO of TMC, is this the start of World War III? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you subscribe and smash that like so more people can see this video, more people can be aware of this. And I think we're gonna have a crazy, crazy next couple of years with this going on. Hope you guys have a blessed day. Peace.